Hey guys, welcome to the Studio Sherpas podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Coral, and with me today is Ryan Spanger. Ryan is the founder of Dream Engine, which is a corporate video production company based in Melbourne, Australia. And I think you'll realize pretty quick that he might be from someplace like Melbourne, Australia. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan, thanks very much for having me.
Oh, come on. You're supposed to say like, good day, mate, or something like that. Should have prepped you.
G'day, mate.
Oh man, I'm not gonna forget the rise up light. Wait, what? How am I supposed to say razor blades? What lights?
Lights.
Oh, lights.
It's a real Aussie drawl, but
Light.
as it turns out, we don't all have Crocodile Dundee hats and carry, huge knives.
Well, you obviously changed before the podcast episode, so
I didn't want to freak you out.
Oh man, hey, so I'm super glad that you're here. Give us a little picture of Dream Engine, what you guys do, who you serve, and how you help people.
Well, Dream Engine is, as you mentioned, a corporate video production company based in Melbourne, Australia. And so we make things like corporate videos, training videos, events, some TV commercials, and videos for websites. And we mainly work with medium and large corporates, government departments, universities, that sort of thing. And this is actually my 20th year of doing this work.
Gosh, congratulations.
Thank you. Survived so far. And so it's hard to know exactly, the point where I transformed from, one-man band freelance sort of operator to actually formally running a business. But it was a kind of slow and gradual transition.
That's amazing. Do you have your own podcast? Because as I'm listening to you, I'm like, man, this guy, he's got a smooth voice. He's calm. He's not crazy like the other guy in the microphone here.
I did actually have a podcast which I started in 2014, I think it was.
Oh man,
And
that was before podcasts.
We did 29 episodes. It's called the Web Video Marketing Show, and I'm sure it's still out there. And people can seek it out if they want to and check it out. And I got to episode 29, and I think I actually ran out of things to say. It was like I've covered it all for now. And I would love to get back into it at some point.
That's awesome. Yeah, you definitely have like the vibe for it. I love that. What would you say over 20 years in business? That is impressive. That's amazing. I mean, that's a huge feat in of itself. What would you say, looking back at 20 years, what would you say is like one of your just absolutely favorite moments of being in business?
Oh, there's so many. But I think really it is just, if I think of sort of one or two of the early jobs that I got, like, it's particular moments. Like I remember this was probably the first job that I ever got. I'd just finished film school, and someone had contacted the film school about getting someone to make a music video. And I contacted this guy, and it was this cover band that played in local pubs, but it was just the most exciting thing to think that I was actually going to get paid for doing this sort of work. And we met and we talked about the job, and then he asked me to, I think on the spot, what's it going to cost? And I was so nervous. And I think, like I said something like, I don't know, something crazy like $300 or $500 or something like that. And he just said straight away, cool, that sounds good. Let's do it. And, he was probably thinking to himself, what a bargain. I just came away from the meeting so excited, just thinking, this is awesome. I'm going to get paid to do this stuff.
Oh, man. Yeah, man, I love that. I love that. It's like, I think I've said this a number of times on the show. For us to just stop, take a breath, step back, and look at what it is that not only that we get to do, that we get to create and spend our time doing, but the fact that people pay us dollars to do it is such a gift. And I think we take it for granted all too often because, it's a grind, man. There's a lot of work to do. There's lots to learn. There's lots of stuff to buy. But at the same time, it's like, wow, we get to do this. This is incredible work. So I love that story. That is really cool, man.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we get to do this. We actually get to make a living in doing this work, and to have that affirmation from people saying, I believe in you and your work enough to pay you for it. And it takes a while, because I think probably for me, the first would have been 3, 4, 5, even 5 years in business. I had many moments where I thought to myself, I don't know if this is going to work.
Yeah.
Like, am I just kidding myself?
Yeah.
Is this really possible that I'm going to be able to make a living doing this? And luckily, I did say to myself at the start, give it 5 years and then we can reevaluate after that. And I'm really glad that I did, because it was really challenging in the early days.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm sure, and I'm sure that the early days were challenging, the middle days were challenging, and probably even recently there's been challenges, right? You're not a business owner if you haven't incurred challenges throughout. But at the same time, there there are elements inside of what you do, who you are, how you've run your business, that have helped make it last for 20 years. Um, this question reminds me of like being at a wedding, and they have all the old people get up there, or well, they have everybody dance, and the oldest couple ends up being up there, and we've been married for 50 years. Well, I guess 50 years isn't, your voice probably isn't like that at 50 years, but they're like, okay, and the DJ's like, so what's the secret sauce? How did you make it 50 years? And it's like, well, just yes, dear, whatever she says, yes, dear. So terrible lead into this question. What would you say is the secret sauce to being in business 20 years? Because that's 99 is when you started your business, 1999, the 1900s. Is that right?
Also,
Oh man, it's
yeah,
2000.
you know what? It's true actually,
Okay,
because 99 was the very first paid job that I did.
there it is.
So yeah,
In the 20th century, man. What was that
yeah.
like?
It was actually remarkably similar to now,
Yeah.
except we didn't have. Oh, we had the internet. It was actually not that different. It was just not quite as fast, I think.
Hmm. Yeah. So secret sauce. What do you got? What would you say is like one of the things that has allowed you to make it this far?
Well, a few things. I mean, really, to be honest, there's definitely some luck involved. You can
Yeah.
call it luck. You can call it sort of maximizing opportunities when they come along, some good fortune. But in the early days, some opportunities came to me, whether it was just through someone that I knew who knew someone else who said, you should check out this opportunity. And I was able to grab those chances. Um, there were a few big jobs that just somehow almost felt like they fell in my lap. But the thing is, not to think that luck just arrives, gives you a gift, and you take it. It's you really have to grab that chance and make the most of it. But that's one part of it for sure.
Yeah.
And then I think the other part is just really, really, really wanting to succeed and not prepared to fail.
Yeah.
Not being prepared for this not to work out. So I think, with clients that I worked with, even now, but particularly in the early days, just being so committed to thinking, how can I make this work, and have them go away going, that was an awesome experience. I'm going to tell other people about this.
Yeah. I think that is key. I think that just that kind of optimism, like whatever it takes, like this, if this is like your calling or the thing that you're supposed to do, you just make it work. You figure it out. Quick story, last week or 2 weeks ago, we have one of our, clients is sort of a client partner relationship where we do a revenue share with this client for tutorials that she sells online. We film them all, and then we do all the marketing and stuff for her. We spend probably $6,000 to $7,000 a month on Facebook ads to help promote what she's doing. And, I think our revenue is it's about $20,000 a month in revenue. So and probably 80% of our revenue comes from Facebook. Well, I got a message from Facebook that said, we have closed your Facebook ads account down for violation of our policies. And then it goes on to, I should just actually pull this up because it's the most ridiculous email. It says, and here's the explanation if you want to know exactly what you did. And then in the spot where it's supposed to tell me, it's like, you violated our policies. For more information, click this button. And then clicking that button just goes to like all of their policies. No description, nothing. I'm reaching out to like, multiple, our Facebook person, other people that have helped us with Facebook stuff. And I'm like, this doesn't seem like this is a good thing at all. We get it. We respond to them, with all of this like very formal, hey, we're confused. Can you help us understand? And then one more, like very just, you violate our thing and no explanation. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. But in the meantime, here's where I'm going to bring this story full circle. When this happened, this made me think like, okay, so this is when people say, hey, don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't have just like one big client and, trust that they're going to, always be feeding you jobs, because they could go out of business or they could find another video company or whatever. And I was like, this is that moment where a lot of our, the majority of money comes from Facebook advertising. And so as we're sending out emails to Facebook and trying to figure this whole thing out, in the back of my mind, I started writing notes, and I was just like, okay, so we need to, we've talked about doing YouTube, having a YouTube presence. So we actually just need to start that. And I know that's probably going to take some time. We could also do YouTube ads. I wrote down like 6 ideas of things that weren't related to Facebook at all, that if, and then I looked at this list and I'm like, man, if the Facebook ads never come back on and we do these 6 things here, this business is like, there's a ton of room for us to be successful. But we were just so focused on the Facebook ads thing. Long story short, it took about a week, but the ads came back on through just some minor drama. Nothing wrong that we had done. It was just out of the blue, super crazy, weird stuff. But anyway, to your point, it's that mindset that I feel like I've been fortunate enough to just, I don't know, be drawn to say like, okay, well, there's a challenge here. It's not a problem. It's a challenge. How are we going to approach this challenge? What are things that we can do to solve this here? But what are some other things that, we can be doing in the meantime to just make things better for us or for others or whatever?
Oh, most definitely. And I've heard that that's happened to quite a few people in the last few weeks, that whole Facebook scenario that you described. And they all had the same reaction, came out of nowhere, couldn't work it out, and then had to just be inventive and creative and, come up with other ways of dealing with it. And sometimes you find actually something else that works better, like you end up working more on organic and
Yeah.
actually get more cut through from doing that. So,
Yeah, that's good. Well, so I know one of your things is the majority of your business comes from large corporations. Is that right?
that's right.
So when I started in this work, I was doing, when I first started 15 years ago, I was doing some work for our college. I was doing some work at the church that we were going to. I was doing some scanning slides for like, grandpa's 80th birthday and this couple's anniversary, just like I was doing anything. If somebody said, hey, Ryan, will you do this video thing? I didn't care what it was. I was like, yes, I want to do it. You're right. Cause I was like, had to make a living. So I'm just doing all sorts of the things. And I I didn't know what I didn't know. And, there were businesses and I'm like, well, I don't know how to approach a business. I'll go to chamber of commerce thing. But the further along I got into this work, we would get inquiries from like big businesses and ones where I'd be like, sitting at a conference room table being super intimidated. They're talking about ROI. I have no idea what ROI is. They're talking about key stakeholders and words that I'm just like, I don't know what you're saying. This is weird. I don't belong here. And then there are even bigger companies and there's so many layers of like politics and all these things that I just for the longest time was like, this is gross. I don't understand it. I don't want to understand it. It's just easier to kind of stay over here and stay in this lane that I'm comfortable with. Well, can you just kind of paint a picture, like what is in your mind, when you say larger corporate clients, what does that look like? And what does a working relationship as a video studio look like with a larger corporation?
Mhm. Yeah, and I should say I was just like the situation that you described when I started. I would take just about anything, and I just wanted to learn and
Yes.
experience and get paid. And I was doing, from weddings to music videos to videos for businesses, and working with a whole range of different types of clients. And I suppose I should start by saying it's not like there's a hierarchy that you start working, on weddings and then smaller businesses and then
Yeah.
medium and large. There's no one right way. Like, it's important to find the types of clients that you like working with.
Yeah.
But a lot of people have asked me, how do you get jobs with larger businesses? The big advantage is once you're working with one type of business, you're having a particular type of conversation, using certain language, speaking to certain people where you can really hone your message a lot better, rather than speaking to a whole range of different sizes of businesses where the way that they communicate is different, the way that they think is different. So in terms of larger businesses, it's really just businesses that, generally that we know, brands that we know, brands that, we use that are very recognizable, that are sort of, part of our life, are, big national or international brands. And I've just found over the years, I really enjoy working with these types of businesses, and there's advantages and disadvantages, and we can talk about that. But
Sure.
I guess it's really just thinking about what are the big brands that that you're aware of.
Yeah. So, well, that's uh, you hit the nail on the head, because when we start, we all get in this spot where it's like, okay, well, I did something for a lawyer, I did a wedding, and I did something for a nonprofit, and we throw those 3 videos on our website, and then we're getting other calls from nonprofits and other random companies in between and other organizations, and we never come up. There's no common language, right? It's just like, we do video. That's like the common language. But like, the nonprofit wants to hear that, hey, we know that your biggest needs are fundraising, so reaching out to donors, volunteers, like those are kind of like the big areas where you need help. And like the kinds of videos that would go well with that would be this. You're talking about, like, Ford Motor Company, you're talking to them, you're going to talk extremely different to Ford Motor Company. And until you really get familiar with the pain points of the industry or the organization, you can't there's no common language. So you're just, and I'm saying this is me, as I'm like searching for the right words to say so I sound smart and I look like I know what I'm talking about. But in retrospect, I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't get embarrassed often, but it's a little embarrassing thinking about how I tried to look and be more smarter than I actually am.
Oh, look, I know what you mean. Like when I first started working with corporates, I had this suit that I would put on, and um, it's not about like
Sorry, I almost
I think
lost my
suits. I
coffee.
think suits look great,
They do.
but
They do.
it was like I felt like I had to put on this mask or this disguise, or I had to be a certain person. And I remember once I went out to a couple of meetings, and then I caught up with my friend afterwards. And by the end of the day, I don't know, the suit was a bit disheveled, my shirt was out, and he said something like, "Oh, you look like you're a school student, like you had a big day at school," or something like that. And it just cut me down to size, and what I realized over time is
Hmm.
if suits are your thing, that's
Yeah,
great. That's
totally.
absolutely fine. When you're working with people in corporates, they are exactly the same as everyone else. People are the same, wherever you go, people have the same needs, the same interests. I guess I had certain assumptions that I thought people who work in corporate are a certain way. And then as I got to know people, I discovered, oh, you're into playing guitar like I am,
Right.
or, you, um, love music, or you go to a lot of bands on the weekend, or whatever it is, they're just the same. The other thing is, because we're creatives going into that environment, they don't expect us to be carbon copies of
Oh man,
them.
that's
Th-
good.
you know they want us to be creative, they want us to be a little bit out of the box, and we're allowed to be. We don't have to conform to the same rules. The important thing is we need to understand their language and their culture and their needs and their way of interacting, so that when you're there with them, they feel like you're part of our tribe. Like you can be a little bit different. I guess it's like, if you think about tribes, um, there was like a medicine man, or a kind of someone who was within the tribe, but they were different. They weren't. And that's sort of like us as storytellers coming in there. They need to feel like we're with them, we're part of them, but we have some unique knowledge, so we can bring that uniqueness and individuality. But you just don't want them to feel like you're an outsider, like you don't get them. So it's really that balance. But at the end of the day, you're working with a person. We have this impression of this big brand that's been built up over time with
Yeah.
all this branding and marketing. But at the end of the day, you're just working with someone else, really
Right.
not too different to yourself.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's really good, because at the end of the day, there's one person that is signing your contract, that's having the phone call or having the email exchange, that is in charge of, that person's been in charge of finding the video company, right? You might have talked to 10 people in the conference room, or have been talked at, by 10 people, but it's really one person that's, they work 9 to 5, they go home, they've got a family, they like to hang out, here in the United States on 4th of July, we do fireworks. I don't know what you do in Melbourne. Maybe just look at all the weird Americans that are doing fireworks. But they're just like you and me. They just have a different job. There's a different role. They have a different lane, and they want to feel heard. They want to feel cared for. They want to feel like, when it comes to the video, that they can trust you. And so if you just own who you are, what you do, how you help businesses, you have a process, you communicate that process, you ask a lot of questions to really figure out what are the pain points that you're experiencing. And because I really want to figure out, is this a job that I can handle or not? If it's not, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be straight up. But if it is, then cool, we'll keep going. And I think a lot of people are afraid to put, people that are wanting to do more corporate work are afraid to put their picture, or their team's picture, or lack of team's picture, on their website, because there's this feeling of like, well, if I'm going to work for a corporation that's 1,000 employees or bigger, they need to feel like I'm a corporation too, and that I've got a lot of employees. Well, guess what? If they found out that it's just you do amazing work, you've got good referrals, you've got a process, you seem confident. If all of that stuff is in alignment, and then they're like, well, this is a pretty big project, like, and it's only you. So, well, listen, you hire producers, you hire PAs, you hire you hire a team. Like, your expertise is in making it happen. They're not worried about like the details of like, well, how many PAs are going to be there, and how, are you sure? If you've got a track record, or you've got people like that can stand up for you and say like, no, Ryan and his team or whatever, they do good work, or he does good work. They don't care about that. I think my opinion is that some big corporations really like the fact that we're small, we're nimble, we can scale as needed, so we don't have to charge them, through the roof for having 100 people on staff. They're only going to get charged for however many people are going to be required to do this job.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Ryan. And they're used to working with consultants.
Yes.
They're used to having
Yes.
experts, individual experts come in. So as long as you have access to resources, whether this is crew or equipment, they want to know that you're able to scale,
Right.
and that you're able to deal with the project that they have. But it's very easy to fall into that trap of feeling like you're not big enough or not good enough.
Yeah.
And that takes time,
Yep.
and I guess the more work that you do, the more runs you get on the board, the easier it comes. So it makes sense that we might feel that way. Like it doesn't make sense to actually come in all guns blazing if you haven't done any work for large corporates and
Right.
put on an act, because I think generally people will see through that, or it's not going to carry you through. So if listeners are having those feelings, I think that does make sense. And then it's important to think about, well, how can you be authentic,
Yep.
rather than create a story where, just sometimes you can see people's websites where that there's a bit of pretense going on. And there's really no need to do that.
I feel like I've heard this. I've wrestled with this phrase. I'm wrestling again with it as of late. But this idea of fake it till you make it, and I think that there are ways that you can fake it till you make it, which are fine, and then there are other ways where it's like it's sneaky, or it's just not true to who you are. And I would argue that the times where, if you do get an opportunity to sit with a big corporation, and they're interviewing you for an opportunity, to be able to say, oh, look, like, no, I'm just this company is just me. It's just me, but I have, a network of 12 different people, or 4 different, or we have the capability, to be able to be totally honest with a company and say, here's how I work. Some jobs, it can just be me. Most of the video, production jobs that we're doing, it's usually me, it's usually a producer, and sometimes a camera, usually it's 3 to 4 people. If you just kind of explain how you work, the fact that it's just you're just really smart and able to build a team and know what a client needs. So to be able to tell this corporation, you could say, right now, I have no idea what it is that you need. I don't know if you need more than me. I don't know if you need a team of 10. I don't know if this is 1 day or 10 days. So I'm going to ask a lot of questions. And after you give me all of these questions, I'm going to walk away from here and I'm going to start thinking through, like, what's the best team? Because part of my expertise is matching you with the right team, not overcharging you, giving you exactly what I think is best for your business.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of putting it. And, to that idea of fake it till you make it, I like the idea of that. I just think that you can think of it in a different way. Like sometimes with my team, I'll ask them to do something and I'll say, I know that you haven't done this before,
Yeah.
and this might not be something that you could do right away, but I know that you can work it out. Like it's probably just a matter of watching a YouTube tutorial or something like that. So we don't need to feel like we can do everything, but we have access to so much information. And also because we've got the foundations, as long as it's something that we know that we're able to work out and do, um, that's not faking it. That's
Yeah.
sort of
Right.
having the background and the ability to achieve it with the resources that we have.
Yeah. I remember when we were doing a ton of weddings, pretty much any person, we would say one of the questions we would ask is like, where is your wedding at? And a lot of times we had already shot there. We get done so many, especially in like Michigan here. And their follow-up question after they would tell us the name of the place, if I didn't say like, oh yeah, we shot there, most of the time I'd be like, oh wow, that's a great place, whether or not we had, shot there. And then they would say like, have you shot there? And I had an opportunity to like, be like, yeah or no. And of course I'm going to tell them the truth, like, no. And then some people would think that that's a bad thing. And so the people that would be like, oh, wow, well, you've never shot there. Well, the other person and I'd be like, oh, well, for us, like, we love new places because, for us, it's the first time seeing anything. So everything's like eye candy and we're looking at everything very different from if it's our 100th time shooting there. And then for the places where we had shot 100 times, people would say like, oh, well, is it like, is it totally boring? And honestly, I could say, actually, we know all of the great places. So, we know where to go and where not. So for me, it was about positioning and helping them understand that where it is, it doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day, it's like, we're here to tell a story. So we're going to do it in an igloo or we're going to do it in a church or whatever. We're going to do our thing, and the location doesn't matter. So really that was the point of my
Yeah,
story. I don't even know how I got
yeah.
that.
What I like about what you were describing there is that you're showing them your process. You're actually showing them how your mind works, because a lot of video production is problem solving. And so as you're talking about it, you're kind of demonstrating, this is how I approach a project. This is how I deal with these sort of challenges. This is how we deal with different locations. And they're just getting an insight, into your mind. And that's really important, because when you're talking to clients, I think particularly corporate clients where there's a lot at stake, think about it from their point of view. They have a very important job to do. They're extremely busy. They have a boss that they need to please, and that boss probably has a boss that they need to please. And so it goes down the line. And so the whole time they're thinking to themselves, can you do the job, on time and on budget, and help me to look good and hit the key messages that I want? And that's really important to bear in mind, that a lot of people like to talk about us being storytellers, which we are, and that's really important to us. And that's one of the most important skills that we have, but it's not necessarily at the forefront of their mind.
Right.
So story is sort of a tool that we use to give them what they need,
Yep.
more so rather than what they're asking for. So I think if we spend too much time talking about story, the risk is that we sort of come across as being too artistic and creative, where of course that's at the heart of what we do. But what they're saying is, is this person going to be flaky? Will they be late?
Right.
Will they embarrass me in front of my team? All these other things, like they're looking at the really foundational stuff. And
Yeah.
so it's important to cover that and convey that you're very solid, very reliable, that you're a very good listener, that you're very respectful, that you're going to fit in with the culture. And then within all that, you'll do all of the magic as a storyteller.
What were you saying? I'm just kidding. I was pretending like I wasn't a good listener. That's brilliant. That's really, really good. I really love that. It's been a struggle for our team because as creatives, John's my creative director, and he's like, man, story. This is what we do. Um, but most of the, our biggest clients, they don't want a story from us. They want us to do the, and so from our perspective, it's like we just like nod and say, yep, we can do that. And then we're going to do everything that we can to try to bring a story perspective or kind of insert, what we do. And early on, when we did that, it didn't work because we were giving the client something they weren't asking for. Now we workshop with our clients before, and a lot of we kind of say like, hey, there's different approaches, and we understand that what we're going to do for you isn't like a traditional story, but if it were, here's how we would approach it, and then here's the alternative. You decide which one do you think is better. And a lot of times they actually say, well, we didn't think that what we wanted was a story, but we're seeing what you're saying, and so this is we actually, I guess, do want us this story thing. It's a very different process, but exactly what you're saying, like, don't feel like if somebody doesn't hire you, you're all about story, you're all about creativity. They need to, exactly what you're saying, Ryan. They need to feel confident that you're going to not embarrass them, that you're hearing what they're saying and you're gonna do what they say. You don't hear all the things that they say and say, yep, 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 we can do that, and then give them something that they don't want because you're creative and because you want to give them a story. That's not helpful. That's not going to get you a referral. That might not get your other 50% of the job paid for. You really need to be a good listener and kind of guide them, right? This is where the whole Sherpa thing comes from. You need to just help guide them, and if they're not vibing with what you really want to do with their brand, then you need to decide, is this a good fit or not?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I mean, with story, it's like, when I was just thinking when we make meals for my kids, I'm not saying vegetables, oh, vegetables are the best. This is really healthy. This is what's going to make you strong. I'll think, you guys love pizza, so let's do that, and we'll put some vegetables on. So they're getting what they need more so than what they're calling out for. There's this concept of the chocolate coated carrot, like, and it's how can we give our clients really what they need, more so what rather than just sort of what they're immediately
Yeah.
calling out for. So there's an art to that, and there's a lot of education as well. And I make that mistake sometimes. I just sometimes forget that some clients know very little about what we do.
Yeah.
They and that's where I remind myself I need to do more work on educating, particularly in the early days. And sometimes clients, they'll ask, so will you bring the lights, or is that something that we need to get? It might be something so obvious, and that's when I realize, okay, I haven't done my job properly here, because there's a lot of educating that we need to do.
Yeah.
And slowly over time I think the concept of story is becoming bigger and more important, and people in just generally in marketing have embraced it a lot more
Yeah.
now. But it's something that we have to sort of approach carefully. And the most important thing is to just keep on thinking from the client's point of view. What is their immediate problem that they want to solve? What are they thinking about?
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. So if you're just starting out, you don't have relationship with any corporate anybody. What's your what as a business, and you want to do, you're like, man, I want to work with some large corporations. Like, what are you going to do? Like, what are some of the steps that you're going to take to try to land some of these meetings, which hopefully land to jobs?
Obviously, to build up a body of work and marketing material. And I'm sure that's something that most listeners are doing already. And it's something that we can all work on more, because we can often end up falling into the trap of spending so much time working on marketing material for our clients rather than ourselves. But, you know, what is the body of work or material that you can build up that when people see it, they'll say, yes, I think this is something that you can take care of. Sometimes I think people can end up spending too much time working on their show reel, and show reels are nice to grab attention, but they don't necessarily demonstrate that you know how to do a particular job. So if there's a certain type of work that you're going for, whether it's a training video or internal communication, build up some work that you can show to clients, so you can show them, we've done work just like the job that you're talking about, and show it to them and talk them through how you went through that challenge. Build up some case studies, some testimonials. Proof is just vital, because I think when prospects are making a decision. They're sort of walking this line between hope and fear. And often, fear can be more powerful than hope. So they're thinking to themselves, gee, the work looks good, but I don't know. Are you going to be able to deliver? Are you going to understand me? Will you make me look good? All these sorts of things. And so if you can have as much proof there as possible, that's great. And then the next thing is think about specifically who you're talking to, because there's a big difference between working with small businesses and larger businesses. So if you're working with a small business, often you're working directly with the owner.
Mm.
And that's a very different type of conversation,
Yeah.
because there's usually a lot more emotion involved. And I know that, and you know that, because I bet you're the same as me. When you're talking to a service provider, um, it's very important to me. I will be personally disappointed if it doesn't work out. I feel like my website is a representation of me personally, like it's really, there's quite a lot of emotion involved. Whereas when you're working with corporates, you're working with someone who's working on behalf of a business, who's spending money on behalf of that business. So it's not as emotional. It's someone who, like a project manager, who does this stuff day in, day out. They're working with service providers. So they understand how this relationship works. They understand it's just, it's a very different type of thing. And then within corporates, again, there's different types of people that you're working with. So, and those will be different conversations. So are you making an internal communication video for the internal comms, department? Are you working with the marketing department? Are you working on a recruitment video with the people and culture department? They're all slightly different sorts of conversations. So I think if you do want to create a strategy to go out there and get more of this sort of work, hone in on one thing, choose one type of video or one department, or choose one industry or one niche, and create some material that you can take to them to show them that you've got the ability to do this sort of work.
That's really good info. What red flags do you see or take note of when looking at a potential new opportunity with a larger corporate client?
If they have a crazy deadline, you know, um, back in the early days, I would just take this on as a challenge. And no matter what they said, I would just think, okay, well, you're saying that you need your video in a week's time. So obviously you do. So I'll just do it.
I
And
feel your
even
pain,
if I,
man. Oh,
can you relate to this?
it's like bringing back bad memories. I think of like 2 weeks ago. I'm just kidding, but like, yeah, time and time again. Yes.
Even if I have to stay up all night, I
Yep.
will deliver, because I'm the kind of guy who delivers no matter what. I was contacted by someone yesterday who wanted to make a 15-second commercial for cinema, but they said they needed it ready in 1 week because their boss had already booked the screen time.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
I think
but
a
it's
few
only
years
15
ago,
seconds. So like,
yeah, yeah,
not going to take long to film.
yeah,
30
I,
seconds, maybe.
yeah. I really think a few years ago I would have said, okay, that's a really tight deadline, but we'll make it work. And I
Oh,
was able to say this time, let's allocate a month, because that's what we need. And, I would love to work with you on this job, but I don't want us to cut corners. I don't want it to be too stressful, and we need to allocate the right amount of time. So that's a red flag. Um, Another thing might be budget. And just because you're working with a large corporate, it doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to have a great budget.
yeah.
They often do. But what sometimes happens is that they're working with agencies as well. And so sometimes, they'll go to the agencies for their big work, and then they might go to a video production company and say, oh, we've just got this little budget, so can you do this? And again, you might think, oh, it would be great to have this brand that I can say worked for them. But you've just got to be careful that you don't end up burning yourself out for a really small budget. And again, it's tempting to just go with that. So I think something like that, if they have a really poor brief or just don't know what they want, then that's a red flag. And that's something that you can work through. But it's really disappointing when you deliver work that the client's not happy with. And the main reason they're not happy is because their thought or their hope was going to be something quite different. So sometimes I find clients aren't clear on what they want, and they might just say something like, well, you're the expert, you
Yep.
guys are the creatives, we just want you to do something really cool with it. Like maybe you can do something with some effects and have some text, floating around and some cool music and some fast cutting and just, make it look cool or something like that, something very vague. So I'd say that's another really big red flag. And
Those
I
are
bet a lot of listeners can relate to
Oh
these
my
things.
gosh, dude! It's like I'm getting a little anxious only from past horror stories. Being in the business, me 15 years, you 20 years. It's like you learn the wisdom that we've gained, the opportunities where we've had. It's like, oh, I better say either no way, I can't do this, or we need to. You're saying a week, and you've already booked the time. Well, I'd love to help you. Let's do this in 4 weeks, knowing that they probably can pull strings. I think our assumption is always like, oh, well, they said it's a week, so that's all, we got to make it happen. But 9 times out of 10, when we've gone back to somebody and said, hey, listen, why is it a week? Like, we already have this thing booked. Well, and pressing in a little bit, like, can that be booked on a different day? Like, is that why? Well, I guess it could. It's like, oh, geez, then we're going to save a ton of stress. And there's just that. So for people that are just starting, the longer you do this, the more opportunities you'll get to be like, oh my gosh, these are red flags. So I love that, we're with you today, Ryan, and you're kind of bringing a lot of these up that I just haven't thought of or try to repress because they bring back bad memories of people saying like, oh, it's a small job, but and for us, we're like, shoot, like we could definitely use a small job right now, and then it grows into this scary big thing that there's no way you can do, and they're not going to be happy, and then your team's not happy, and then like, but you still owe it to them, and then they still owe you money, and it's just this whole nightmare. We have a project. It's a potential project. I chatted with the guy earlier this week, and I'm like, well, so explain what you want. And he's explaining it, and he's worked with video production in the past, and so he knows a lot of the lingo. And I'm like, well, so do you want to direct this thing, or do you want us to, come along? Do you want us to help you? He's like, well, I want you guys to help because you're the expert. That's like, and so I say, well, great, because when you want us to be the expert in not just the pushing of the buttons for the camera, here's this thing we do. It's this workshop. We're going to create a blueprint with you. We're going to ask a lot of questions and really create a blueprint before we hit record on the camera, just to make sure that you're clear on what we're going to do, and that we're clear on what we're going to do. So it's like this situation where the company is like, hey, we need this thing in a week. And you're like, well, there's not enough time to like, for me to sit down with you guys. You're saying that I'm the expert. You want all the ideas, but when am I going to come up with these ideas? And when are you going to sign off on these ideas? And, you're crossing your fingers. They're crossing their fingers, hoping and trusting that they're going to find a diamond in the rough, and you're just going to nail it on the first try, because you only have the first try because it's due in a week. So we've gone to this workshop format where we're doing this, and people are saying like, oh, okay, so we're going to get alignment with our team in this meeting. You're going to come up with a lot of information and ideas and whatever, but you're going to present these ideas to us in the same way that you would present the first draft of a video. We're all going to look at it and poke at it and make some edits, but it's going to be in paper format, and we're going to see and say like, yeah, those are all the things that we said in the meeting, and this makes sense. Like, let's move forward. Oh my gosh, it has allowed us to experience way less stress, to be able to turn jobs away that aren't interested. So I'm talking to this guy the other day, and I say, well, it sounds like you needed this workshop. And then he's like, well, it sounds like, you're wanting to charge me for you guys just giving me stuff that I already know, or I've already told you. I'm like, well, that's, maybe I didn't explain it good enough. Back and forth. Then he starts emailing me, and I'm like, this guy is just going to be a handful. He wants us to come up with these ideas, but he doesn't want to spend the time to come up with the ideas. So I can't work for free. I don't work for free anymore unless I choose to work for free. And this guy has money and wants videos, and he needs to pay me. So anyway, I'm ranting.
That sounds so good. I feel like that's something that I should do more. And I love the language that you use, which is very, conversational, but quite gently talking people through this process, and having the confidence to create this workshop where I think if you can create a great workshop, then regardless of if the video goes ahead or not, they can come away with so much more clarity about their business
Oh my
and their
gosh.
communication strategy. But it does. First of all, you've got to create something awesome, and then you've got to have the confidence and the language to be able to introduce that concept to them in such a way that they don't go, "Oh, you're just upselling me."
Right. Right. Well, and the beautiful thing about the workshop is we tell people, hey, we'll do the workshop. It's $2,500, which for a large corporation, they're like, oh gosh, I can just use my company credit card on that. Don't have to get approval or anything. Let's do the workshop. And we tell them, hey, if you hate the workshop, like I'll give you your money back and forget it. We won't do the blueprint or anything. But if you liked the workshop and it was helpful, and everybody is like, oh my gosh, like, we had everybody from our team that mattered for this project in on this workshop, and we got alignment. You were able to help us do that. And it's like, you guys could have done this on your own, but you feel like I'm the expert, I'm the consultant, which I am. You've carved out the time to do this project, which you could do on your own, but it just feels better to have the expert come in and do this. So it's not like we're even coming up with great ideas inside of the workshop. We have a format and a process for how we do the workshop. So it's not like a fake workshop. It really is like, it's valuable and it's good, but it's dedicated time. And they're just like, this was so great. We haven't had anybody not hire us to actually fulfill on the blueprint, but
Oh,
they pay this little amount up front, and we win them over through it with our process, and then with the blueprint, and then maybe there's changes in the blueprint, but by the time we go to production, everybody's on the same page. The final video, there's no huge surprises because the stakeholders have been a part of the project from the very beginning, and they're not sending it to their boss, and then coming back to us and be like, oh my gosh, the boss saw it and he doesn't like it. It's like, no, 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 no. Like, you sent the blueprint to your boss, and if your boss wasn't in the meeting, your boss saw the blueprint and was like, this is great. This looks great. You guys are on the right track. Like, let's keep moving forward. So
oh, I think that's brilliant. I love that. I love the fact that you offer a guarantee for that you really back yourself in that way. And then I would imagine that through doing this workshop, you would be planting the seeds for future work because you might identify a whole
oh
range of
gosh,
things. Oh,
yes.
case study video. Oh,
Yep.
we should definitely do that.
Yep.
That's something that we can look at doing later on down the track. So you're creating a strategy.
hmm It's been great. We have this really is not supposed to be a commercial about the video blueprint method that we do, but we have clients who have hired us multiple times for we call them hero videos with a couple of our different clients because they have different brands and different branches of what they're doing. So they've hired us multiple times to do different videos within their companies because they just love the format. They love to be able to see this blueprint. But then they've also hired us for a number of other projects that didn't require the blueprint. It was just like, which we still go through a lot of the same questions if they don't do the blueprint, things that we know that we need, and then kind of going through that stuff on our kickoff call with our production team to say like, hey, here are all the things that we talked about. It sounds like what you need. We just want to make sure that we're understanding, you guys are understanding. And those are the best relationships where we've done multiple workshops, and then they can just call us for something quick and easy because we get their brand, we understand what they need. It's like we're just in step with them. So for them to
Mm.
change video providers, it's going to take, it would be a huge decision for them because there's a comfort. They like the process, and it's like changing your bank or your insurance company. It's just like, oh man, it's just too much of a headache to do. So I'll just stay with, well, not that they wouldn't like working with us, but I'm just kind of, okay, I'm done.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. Can I ask you, like, did it take a while for you to build up the confidence to offer that to clients?
Well, here's the thing. The very first one was I was sitting with really with a consultant, and he said, "Hey, I want to hire you to kind of walk me through some video strategy stuff." And I was like, "You want to hire me?" And I know that he charged like $2,500 to do his consulting thing. So I was like, "Yeah, it's $2,500." And he's like, "All right, perfect. Here's the check." And I was like, "Oh crap! Now I got to figure out like." What do I walk him through? Like, what is the thing? And really, it was just like, if you take nothing else away, if this is something that you want to do, it's like coming to the meeting saying like, what is your number one goal? If we're only to accomplish one thing in our time together today, what would feel like success to you, or what would feel like a win to you? Stop, listen, write down that thing, and they'll have one thing. And then the follow-up question is, okay, well, what else? And then let them think and let them give you a what else, what else. And then they'll be like, no, that's it. Just, those two things. I feel like, cool. All right. So then your brain can start thinking like, okay, well, what are the questions? What are the things? and it's about asking questions. It's not about solving problems in the workshop. It's about asking enough questions to really get a feel for the brand, the direction, the audience, what's a win for the project, and then after the workshop, spending time thinking through, okay, like what's, let me regurgitate this stuff and put it in a way that these ideas, I've got some ideas now, these ideas would be helpful for them. At least that's what I think. And then presenting that, and people just want to be heard. They've got some okay ideas. Sometimes they have really good ideas, and they just need somebody to put a stamp of approval on it, and or to see if there's any red flags or anything like that.
Yeah, very cool. Well, this is definitely something that people can use with corporates, and I think something that's quite important is when you approach them and you propose this idea, you need to, I suppose, come from like a high status point of view, because you basically need to demonstrate enough authority that they're going to say, well, we're going to invest in you, and we're not even investing in video, which is actually the thing that we came for. We're prepared to defer that a little bit, or at least go through this process before, to get to a better place. But they really need to be quite sure that they need to have that sense of trust, and that's where building authority with experience and examples of work and logos of companies that you've worked with and case studies and all that sort of thing to help back you up can work really well.
I love it, man. That's great. Ryan, I'm bummed. I feel like I don't know if this coffee was really good. The conversation is really good. I think it's the mix of those two things. I wish we could go for another hour, but I don't have another hour. And I think your employees are it's 8 a.m. where you're at, and they're about to start coming to work, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, I've loved talking to you. This has been great.
Well, so tell me, if somebody's listening to this and they're like, they're maybe they've done some corporate work, maybe they're not happy with their corporate clients or whatever. What is a good next step for someone that wants to do this, maybe wants to do it better? What do you recommend that they do?
You mean for video production companies who want to start working with larger clients?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, a few things. So have a look at do some research and look at the way that other companies are doing it. I mean, that's usually the best thing, is to just look at great examples of the way other people are doing it and see how you can modify their process and incorporate the best aspects of it into your own.
Mhm.
Then, like I said, maybe just start with one niche or one particular service, or one industry, and build up a body of work that you can use to back you up, because you can say whatever you want to, but what proof do you have that you can actually do this? And then actually create a strategy to get yourself out there to start winning some of this work. It might be about getting your website right, doing some Google ads. LinkedIn is an amazing place, and create a LinkedIn strategy where actually create some scripts. Think about how you're going to approach people. Are you going to use Sales Navigator? What pages are you going to link to on your website? How are you going to come across as being useful and interesting and not too salesy? Find your thing. Talk to family and friends. There's so many ways of getting yourself out there, but actually build a strategy and get out there and do it, because this is really achievable. If this is the market that you want to work with, it's only barriers in your own mind that would be stopping you, and then having the practical steps out to get out there and do it. But I really love working with this market. There's challenges in some ways, and there's great rewards in other ways. But if it's something that you want to do, then really just set that as an intention and take the steps and just do it.
Oh man, that's really, really good. I am even more excited now because earlier today I was introduced to this woman who is a friend of mine, and he's worked with
Now my
her.
internet's
Uh,
dropped out.
she is a LinkedIn specialist, and so she helps people with their bios so that they can reach out to people, and she helps build LinkedIn strategy. And she's like, LinkedIn right now, it's like the hottest, it's the best thing, because it's not like Facebook where they've already just wrecked it for like businesses. It's not like, any other platform. It's like, if you want a new strategy, if you want some opportunities that you'll never be able to get elsewhere, LinkedIn right now it's the time to get in. So she's going to be on the podcast, and I think I'm going to try to get her episode to come on right after this one, because I feel like it'll be a great segue into that strategy. Yeah, dude, all that stuff. Looking at what other
Cool.
people are doing, modifying their process, picking a niche, one niche, I think is great, and building a strategy, starting with the end in mind. What's the dream? And then working backwards from there and building out a plan to start attacking that. Ryan, this is great, man. This is rich, rich, rich. I'm so glad that we did this episode together. You're great, man.
Oh, thank you. I've really, I just enjoyed talking to you today, and you got me thinking about this idea of doing this workshop, which I have sort of maybe thought about a version of that, but
Yeah.
when you described it, it actually sounded achievable. It actually sounds like something that I can do that my clients would really benefit from. So that's really something that I want to try and see if I can make that work.
I'll send you a link to where you can buy the course from me, and I'm going to teach you how to do it from step A to Z.
Perfect. That sounds great.
Ryan, anything else? How can people find you online, and just any last words for us?
Well, LinkedIn is a good place to find me. That's an area where I'm spending more and more time
Mm.
and putting content out there. And, as filmmakers and storytellers, we have a natural advantage because we can create
Yeah.
interesting content that grabs people's attention. We've got, films, we've got all sorts of content that it's easy for us to generate our own content. So I'm spending more time on there, learning and experimenting, and I suppose learning the language of LinkedIn and finding my feet. So I would love to connect with people on LinkedIn. And if listeners are out there giving LinkedIn a try, I'd love to see what you guys are doing.
I love it, man. Hey, thank you again. What a gift for you to give us your time. Appreciate, and even knowing the time difference, getting up extra early to do this. Loved it and appreciate you, and excited for whatever you're going to do in the future. I mean, having been in this work for this long, you have a lot of experience and a lot of really a lot to offer big corporations in a workshop format. I mean, I feel like you're going to just thrive and love that format.
Well, thank you. I mean, I don't know if this sounds crazy, but I feel like I'm just getting started, and we've talked about challenges and mistakes, and I feel like I've learned a lot from, some of those things and red flags that I didn't pick up on. But I feel really excited about, the work that I'm doing now and where the business can go. So yeah, great to connect with you, and thanks for having me on the podcast.
Awesome, man. Take care.